Welcome to PHP Podcast. I'm Mike.
And this is Orlando, and we're here for another Monday mini-sode.
Yeah.
And we're still in the midst of Q4, but we're shifting a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like, we've done a lot of Q4 talk. I'm sure Instagram, all the social media platforms, all your YouTube, all your podcasts on reselling has been Q4. And, when you're part of those communities and you hear it all the time, you kind of want to hear something else. And actually, that kind of connects to what we're talking about today, which is joining different communities in the reselling space. And we want to talk about this because there's different levels, there's different types of communities people join. And depending on what you're looking for is going to depend on where you should be engaged at, what types of communities you should join. And so we're going to be talking about the different types of reselling communities.
So there's plenty out there. And I kind of broke this down into most minimal engagement, more engagement, and maximum engagement. Just because, we're all in different stages as far as in our lives and what we can do. And so I've always said, get connected somewhere.
Yeah, we've actually have a whole podcast about, what do we title it? Not socializing, but something like being involved. We've got full podcasts that kind of talk about the importance of having that community, being on social, all of those things. So those are important. Go back and watch those if you want to learn more about our thoughts on those. So
episode 194, social media for more profit.
That's right. And, there's that aspect of it. Part of it too is just community. And so one community that people can be a part of is kind of just the YouTube community. So if you're watching the Monday Mini, you're not on the podcast side, because we really don't have like a podcast community in the sense of the people who just listen on the podcast side. Some of those people are on Instagram, but if they're not on Instagram, they might not actually be connected to what Pure Hustle Podcast is doing. But YouTube, we have a consistent group of people who comment. Like most of our videos, we can expect like one or two people that are going to comment. There's people who comment on, every third or fourth video. But the nice thing is there's a community there. And some channels have obviously a lot more comments. It's hard to be completely connected unless you're like, really, really engaged on their YouTube channel and they're like pinning your comments and stuff like that. But the nice thing is you can, a lot of times I'll watch a 5-minute video and then I'll spend 20 minutes reading comments, right? What have people said? What have people added to this? And sometimes the comments alone are where you get a lot of the value from. People have different opinions, people have different advice. And so,
or you learn what not to do.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. Sometimes you disagree with people.
Terrible comments.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I would say if you're just watching, that's great. I mean, there's nothing wrong with just kind of the term on the social media or whatever, just a lurker, someone who just kind of watches from the outside. But if you actually engage, it's really neat. If you see a comment somebody put and it was helpful to you, let them know it was helpful. That's going to encourage them to do it more. If somebody puts a comment and you totally disagree with it, let them know why, because maybe the whole community can learn from that. And YouTube is a great place to do that. Now, things get lost, right? Like if you've got 1,000 comments on a video, it's going to be hard for anybody to find it. It's not super organized. So there are other platforms that allow for maybe a little bit more engagement and direct communication with people.
Yeah, and I would say with YouTube, the key thing is just make sure to find resellers that you respect, that are real, and actually if they kind of fit into your place in life, right? So, I wouldn't be watching a bunch of, $1 million Amazon gurus, because that's kind of not what I want to do. Now, are there YouTubers out there that sell a lot of vintage goods, right? I mean, I just think of like, Craigslist Hunter. What I like is he kind of has a garage sale store. It comes to him, but man, there's such a variety of stuff. And so I really engage with what he has in there, because that's kind of what I do too, right? And the first people I watched back in the day, sold a lot of shoes, and they went to thrift stores, right? So find a way to get engaged in that YouTube community. Now, the next step is, and there's a lot of people that listen to our podcast or, watch our YouTube that aren't on Instagram. And I encourage you to join us on Instagram at Pure Hustle Podcast, because there's a lot that could be learned on social media. I remember all I was doing was YouTube before the podcast. I had been off of social media, I think, since 2009, and we started the podcast. What was it, 2017, 2018? It's been a minute. And I was just, at first I was like, what are we doing here? I remember Mike and I were going back and forth, like, should we post? Should we not? What times are good? What should we post? And then after a while, we just kept posting. And our goal was to continue providing value, but the value we gained on the other end was way more profitable than we could ever imagine.
Yeah. And specifically, like, going to the idea of like community. So on something like that, like, you can have, if you follow a few people, you see what they're posting, and you might notice that if you're commenting on people's posts, maybe you're posting your own things, you're going to have a little bit of community happening where you've got people who are interacting, people who comment back and forth on something, and it's going to be specific, right? Somebody posts something about a certain type of shirt and you got people commenting, oh, that's how you know it's this style, or this year is actually better. And you can have some community that happens there. People get to know each other. We've made a lot of friends through social media. We've done like meetups of people. And then you've got the kind of community that's a little bit more direct where, hey, if you're following somebody, you listen to their podcast, you watch their YouTube, whatever it is, you like their content, you can direct message them, right? So then that's an element of community. It's a little bit more than just YouTube comments, but it's still not a great community. There's not as much back and forth that happens. Maybe there's like somebody posts something, somebody responds to it. So there's a lot of engagement, a lot to be learned. The community level on social media is sometimes a little bit lower unless you're engaged, unless you're willing to DM people and get DMs back. But the problem with that is a lot of times those DMs it's just solo. So it's not as big of a community as much as it's just one-on-one conversations at that point. Whereas the next thing, which is Facebook groups is our next level up. It's more engagement. It's more of a community in the sense of people are having full-on conversations. There's a back and forth that happens. It's more like a forum in a sense, or even like a Reddit. Reddit, I might put in the same category in some ways, where there's a back and forth.
So much good stuff in Reddit too.
There is. Yeah, no, there is for sure. And so a Facebook group, we don't actually have our own Facebook group. But the nice thing too is you can join specific communities. So maybe it's a reselling community, or like Orlando got all those Hot Wheel cars. So if he wants to learn more about Hot Wheels and what to sell, he can join a Hot Wheel car community and have conversations with people and talk to people and get to know things. People do trades on Facebook groups. Hey, I've got this item. Oh, I'll buy that from you. I have this item. I'll trade. And so you actually have a sense of like people that know each other. In fact, when I was growing up, I had friends who were really big into vintage audio. And it was basically, that's what it was. Facebook wasn't a thing at the time, but it was basically a Facebook group. It was a forum that they were on. And man, they would have meetups and they would talk to each other and they'd share things. And they knew things about each other's lives. It wasn't just like, hey, this is this vintage audio I have, but it's like, hey, how's your wife doing? Hey, and everybody kind of knew each other because it was such a tight knit community. And so Facebook groups could be a good place if you're looking for, and this is how you know, like, we're not just trying to like sell you something, because we don't even have a Facebook group, but we do know that Facebook groups are a good place to have some pretty good community.
All right. And the last one is maximum engagement. And, it's funny because I've always talked about, we haven't been in a Discord. I haven't been in a Discord. I've actually been in a crypto Discord, and I found it to be very beneficial. I learned a lot about crypto. I learned about different kinds. I made some money on it, but it was a great community. And, Mike, I know has been part of other groups too. And so, Mike, do you want to share a little bit why we think Discord is a great way to go? Yeah,
so there's kind of two ways Discord communities work. There are the kind of the paid Discord groups where it's like behind a paywall, you get in, but then you're getting like maximum. It's almost like you have direct access to a group of people, some experts, and you're able to directly contact them, message them, and have things that are almost behind a paywall. And so that's a great way to do things, especially if you've got a very specific community, you want to learn some things. We don't do a paid Discord, but I'm planning on doing. And we'll see how it goes, but I'm going to start a Pure Hustle Podcast Discord group. And the idea behind it is I want it to be a community that's open. I want it to be a community for those who are part of the Pure Hustle Podcast group, who listen to our show, that like to, watch our videos. And the idea behind it is, this is going to be an informal. This isn't a, hey, pay us and then we're going to give you bolos. This is going to be
we're not a cook group.
No, we're not a cook group. But I mean, we'll probably have a room in there in the Discord, a channel in the Discord that's like, if people want to share bolos, if people want to share. But the idea is like, let's get to know the people. Like, sometimes when you're a reseller, sometimes you feel like you're on an island, right? Because this can be a very lonely thing. So when you can share your funny stories, like, I was at a garage sale today and this happened, and other people can tell their funny stories of what happened, or ask questions like, hey, how do you ship this? And the idea behind the community isn't hey, let's DM Mike and Orlando on Instagram.
No, I wanted to be a community.
Yeah, I want it to be like, hey, somebody could say, how do I ship this type of item? And like 10 people can respond to them and say like, oh, this is the best kind of box, or make sure you tape it up like this. And it's just people helping each other. And so the cool thing about Discord is you can actually have specific channels, specific things set up. So one can just be like a general for fun. Sometimes there's one that's like just memes where people just post funny stuff that are like maybe reselling related, but not necessarily helpful. Like, you're not going to go there if you're like, I want to get the next bolo, but you're just like, this is a fun thing to do because I'm connected to other resellers. And you'd be surprised at how communities like this, you get a few people who are really, really active, and you get a lot of people who kind of are just in and out, and you end up developing some really cool friendships and people who end up developing connections and, oh, you've got kids. I have kids too. How do you do this with your kids? Hey, my kids have got, school break coming up, and how am I supposed to do reselling when they're at home? And, oh, here's what I do. And that's what a community should be. And so we're hoping to start something. And so if you're interested, if that's something you'd consider joining, let us know in the comments below. Would you be interested in an absolutely free PRSL Podcast Discord that's not a, hey, we're going to teach you how to resell, but hey, let's have a community of people who are like-minded that just want to talk about reselling and life together.
Agreed. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to just, being more in constant contact with everyone, because you understand each of these levels that we discussed, right? It takes a little bit more effort, but at the same time, you also miss out on a lot because, it's part of life. And so you got to find what model works for you. But, YouTube, if that works for you and you're learning through YouTube and through, being in the comments and maybe on lives, being on the chats. I mean, Mike and I love it when we go live on YouTube. So that's great. Get connected that way. If you're going to go on social media, there's great ways. I strongly encourage you, DM individuals every once in a while. I know DMs get flooded and so on, but, I will tell you, this is just a way that humans are biased is, if I have somebody that constantly is DMing me, chances are I'll get faster to replying to them than just a person out of nowhere that it's just a question like, hey, so what should I buy for this Q4? Like, I'm like, well, why would I take the time, right?
You don't know them. They haven't developed that connection with you.
True. Now, in a Discord, that might work out. I don't know. Okay. And then again, Facebook groups, definitely a lot out there. I mean, they're the biggest ones out there. And then, Discord. I'm looking forward to Discord. I think I've had great opportunities in my own Discords that I've joined, and now looking to having our own with PRSL Podcast.
That's right.
And with that being said, make sure to be real,
be relevant,
and be reselling leads.
Peace.